Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer with the podcast from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. Life is frequently looked upon as a series of ups and downs. Some people think they see more ups and downs, while others see the reverse. Then again, there are still others who see life as a steady sameness, with no dramatic changes taking place, just the same thing every day. Ups and downs to such people are perhaps nothing more than a matter of perception. It's really just a camouflage for what is in actuality a flat landscape. But being as most people do sense the ups and downs of life, we are going to look through that perspective. Such people frequently wonder why they undergo this turbulence. Why isn't life a steady ride? The answers to this question range from, that's the way things go, to some version of a divine agency directing things so that this is what happens. If we go with the latter perspective, we get further questions such as, why do bad things happen to good people? Or their converse, why do good things happen to bad people? There are no great universal answers to these questions, but they sure make life interesting, if not frustrating. A subset of the possible answers includes the idea that there is still some sense of divine justice, but that things get complicated. In the grand scheme of things, there may be other factors at work that tend to muddy the waters. We are not necessarily privy to the deeper workings of whatever it is that may be running things behind the scenes, so we don't really have any right to question why things turn out to be the way they do. Another possible answer to the questions is a variation of the steady sameness perspective mentioned above. Perhaps those ups and downs don't have quite the absolute reality we'd like to give them. Perhaps it's really a steady diet of some version of the same thing. Why do bad things happen to good people? They don't. They only seem that way because we have a limited perspective on things. In reality, however, only good things happen to good people, but such people might have to put up with a lot of challenges thrown their way. The challenges are not bad. They are ways of getting better. Not everybody can really live this way, but when one does, it sure smooths out the rough ride. This week's Parsha is called Vayechi. That word means, and he lived. An introduction to the first sentence, which states that Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years until the events described in this Parsha begin to take place. Among these events are Jacob instructing his son Joseph, who was viceroy of Egypt and thus had control of many things, to bury him in the ancestral plot at the cave near the city of Hebron. He also bequeathed to Joseph a status akin to being firstborn, despite the fact that he wasn't firstborn among Jacob's sons. He blessed Joseph's two sons uniquely among his grandchildren, giving them a status like they were the equal of the other sons. This status would remain in the tribal groupings of the Israelites, with two of the famous 12 tribes being these two grandsons. In the dividing up of the biblical land of Israel, the tribes associated with these two received portions just like those associated with their uncles. Much of the rest of the Parsha is devoted to the blessings Jacob bestowed upon his actual sons. While some of these blessings do seem a bit mixed, if not downright harsh, they are all meant to reflect some essential core element that had become part of the identity of that particular son. Each gets something, some longer and some shorter. These blessings, in turn, would have the crucial power to affect the fate of that son's descendants, that is, their tribe. Thus, Jacob's two sons would also have this fate-influencing factor applied to them. One interesting nuance about the blessing to these two grandsons is that Jacob blessed the younger one as the firstborn. When Joseph attempted to correct this obvious impropriety, assuming that it was Jacob's failing eyesight that was causing the problem, Jacob responded by saying that he knew exactly what he was doing. This was to be their fate. The youngest one would have a greater impact on the fate of the nation. The actual blessing, which was the same for both, is itself quite interesting. At first, it may not appear to be a blessing at all, or at least it seems like a blessing without any specific details, which is not the prototype of the Bible. It begins innocently enough, even though it seems to be directed to Joseph rather than his sons. Quote, And he blessed Joseph, saying, the divine power whom my fathers walked before, Abraham and Isaac, the divine power who shepherded me from my time here until today, the angel who redeems me from all evil, should bless the youths, and my name and the names of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, shall be called upon them, and they shall be fruitful in the midst of the land. Well, this sounds biblical enough. There are certain things that have to be understood. First, there is that sticky thing about the blessing being directed to Joseph at first, and not to the ultimate recipients, his sons. Second, we have to understand what this divine power actually is. The first word used is the standard Elohim, which almost invariably means God, though it can refer to an angel or even a human judge. The second sentence in the blessing has an angel handling things. Is this the same divine power that was handling things in the first sentence, or is it something else? Another problem is that the first sentence of the blessing doesn't seem to be saying anything at all. It is just a statement about this divine power shepherding him through life. Finally, the actual blessing at the end appears to be that these youths should be called in the names of their ancestors. Why is that a blessing? First off, we have to clarify what a blessing actually is according to the Bible. It is not simply telling somebody that everything will be wonderful forever and nothing bad will ever happen to them. That is wishful thinking and not really a blessing. A blessing is more on the order of encouragement that the recipient should be able to handle whatever trials and tribulations are thrown their way. With this in mind, perhaps we can understand what this blessing was all about. Joseph was the recipient of the first part of this blessing. He essentially received the blessing that his son should experience the same sense of security that Jacob and his ancestors experienced. They should be aware that there is a divine power that intervenes in the lives of those who choose to be in tune with such things. There was nothing a person like Joseph would like to hear more than this. It told him that his father wished that his sons would walk in those same ancestral footsteps. As far as what that divine power actually was, this is a matter of great debate. It is possible that the first sentence refers specifically to God and the second to some angel. But this is admittedly a bit awkward in the reading. It does sound like the divine power is the angel, and both act in the role of shepherding those who allow themselves to be shepherded by such a power. So if the divine power was actually God, how could it also be an angel? Angels may be divine, but they are not God. It is possible that there is a certain spiritual hierarchy or chain that begins with God and ends with angels. All such spiritual forces really boil down to the same thing: the power of God as it manifests in the world. It may be a direct connection to God, or it may seem to come from some secondary power that could be identified as an angel. In our case, it was the direct influence of God that shepherded them for their entire lives, steering them on the appropriate paths and making sure that they stay on the course that is unique for what they need in life. With the angel, it was the sense of redemption from evil that is available to those who put forth the effort to seek good in life. This is something that is very immersed in the workings of the world. Good and evil are about as earthly as spiritual things get. The sense of redemption from evil, if one is able to feel it, seems to come from something more closely linked to the world than the feeling of being shepherded by God. There is no question that this is the epitome of a biblical blessing. To sense that one's life has a direction imposed by divine will, is the greatest blessing of all. If one has truly experienced this blessing, the most meaningful thing they could bequeath to another is the desire and the will to have such a life. This, perhaps, is the meaning of that expression of the names of Jacob and his fathers being called upon these sons of Joseph. A name is an identity. It carries with it much more than the familiar sound. To be called in the name of another is to share their identity to some degree. With all this in mind, this blessing is nothing short of illuminating. It conveys a sense of direction and protection. stemming from a power that is beyond the mundane forces of the earth. It expresses a desire to be led by God. But more important than all that, perhaps, is this wish to be redeemed from evil. Evil is a permanent feature of human life, whether we like it or not. To be redeemed is to be released to some degree from its pull. It does not mean that a person will not face evil or encounter it, but it does mean that the effects of that struggle will produce a person who is able to walk away from it stronger and ready for whatever comes next. If this requires the assistance of an angel, then so be it. The important thing is to be extricated from its clutches when its power seems too overwhelming to overcome. Bad things do happen to good people. This is the way life has to be. Life's primary goal should not necessarily to be free of all evil. This would be like chasing the wind. But to hope for some sense of redemption from evil is within the reach of everyone. To be able to look evil in the face and to feel that the choice is still there to reject it is to feel redeemed. The inevitable bad things that happen would be perceived as spiritual obstacles. They are something to work around, to overcome, or to allow some force of good the wherewithal to provide assistance in the struggle. Evil is evil, but it need not be bad. It can lead a person to a new path in life, the path of redemption. Shabbat Shalom.